My name is Hazel Matthews, and I'm 23 years old. I had just graduated with honors from Stanford with a business degree when my parents decided to ruin what should have been the proudest day of my life. When I refused, my father grabbed my newly received diploma and threw it into the fireplace. At my own graduation party, surrounded by family and friends, they demanded I sign away my grandfather's inheritance to my sister. "You don't deserve Grandpa's money," he shouted as we all watched it burn. I just smiled and walked out. They had no idea what was coming. If you've ever had family betray you on what should have been your special day, drop a comment below about where you're watching from. While other kids were hanging out at the mall or going to parties, I was studying or helping my grandfather with his business records. No matter what she did, they'd smile and say, "That's just Amber being Amber." Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to find out why I remained so calm while watching my diploma turn to ashes. When I made honor roll every semester, I got a quiet, good job and maybe dinner at Applebee's if I was lucky. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened at the lawyer's office the following week. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. Grandpa had built a successful construction business from nothing, and he recognized something in me that my parents never did. He saw my determination, my work ethic, and my head for business. He'd show me his investments, explain his business decisions, and listen to my ideas with genuine interest. Those Sundays became sacred to me. When I received a partial scholarship to Stanford and asked for help with the remaining tuition, my father lectured me about financial responsibility and suggested I take out loans. We'd just sit on his porch, drinking lemonade and talking about life. I was 15 then, already fascinated by numbers and strategy. You understand the value of things, not just their price. My sister Amber, 5 years older at 28, was the vibrant social butterfly who could charm anyone, especially our parents. When I got accepted to Stanford's business program, he was the one who drove me to campus and helped me move into my dorm. My parents were too busy with Amber's latest crisis. He asked me to help him get his affairs in order. We spent months organizing his estate with his longtime lawyer, Marcus Goldstein. She'd maxed out her third credit card and needed their help to avoid collections. It felt wrong to even think about it while he was still alive, but Grandpa brought it up himself. "You're the only one who appreciates what I built. The only one who might build something herself someday. It's nice of you to humor him." The funeral was a somber affair, but I couldn't help noticing how my parents and Amber kept looking at Grandpa's lawyer throughout the service. When Amber failed 3 classes her senior year and nearly didn't graduate, Mom and Dad hired expensive tutors and then threw her a massive graduation party. Your sister will burn through it in a year, and your parents had never understood the value of a dollar. This pattern continued throughout our lives. "Hazel, why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. What they didn't know was that Grandpa had prepared me for exactly this scenario. When Amber dropped out of community college after 1 semester to find herself, my parents supported her financially through 3 years of aimless traveling. Mom fussed with her hair while Dad checked his watch repeatedly during the university president's speech. When my name was called and I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I heard my father's weak applause and my mother's obligatory cheer. It wasn't the thunderous pride I'd always hoped for, but I reminded myself that this achievement was for me and for Grandpa. His condition progressed slowly, but it was enough to worry my parents, not about his health, but about his money. "College isn't for everyone," Mom would say whenever Amber's education came up. "Your sister has street smarts." Dad asked about my plans after college with unusual interest. "When they realize what I've done, they'll come after you. Be ready." Amber even sent me birthday wishes for the first time in years. Meanwhile, I worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA, applying for every scholarship I could find, They're counting my money before I'm even gone. The only person who truly believed in me was my grandfather, Harold Matthews. "You remind me of myself," he told me once while showing me how to balance his company's books. When I was 16, Grandpa started inviting me to his house every Sunday. As I put on my cap and gown, I felt a mixture of pride and grief. I wished more than anything that Grandpa could have been there to see me graduate. He'd been so excited about this day, had even bought a new suit for the occasion months in advance. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk about money or business. "Your grandfather is just feeling lonely," Mom would dismiss whenever I mentioned these visits. They never understood that those visits were saving me, giving me the validation I never received at home. As Grandpa aged, our bond grew stronger. During my sophomore year, Grandpa was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. Suddenly, they were visiting him regularly, bringing him casseroles he never ate, offering to help with his finances. "They think I don't see what they're doing," Grandpa confided in me during one of our Sunday visits. By my junior year, Grandpa's health had declined further. I never asked about his will or what he planned to leave me. "I'm leaving you the house and most of my savings," he told me plainly one Sunday. I tried to protest, but he stopped me. "It's my money, Hazel. I earned it, and I get to decide where it goes when I'm gone." When Grandpa passed away 3 months before my graduation, I was devastated. Marcus had given me a heads up that the will wouldn't be read until after my graduation, at Grandpa's specific request. "He wanted you to focus on finishing school," Marcus explained. In the months following Grandpa's death, I noticed my parents' attitude toward me shifting. They called more often. Mom suggested shopping trips. I wasn't fooled, but I played along, suspecting that Grandpa had probably told them about his intentions. "Family and money are a volatile mix," he'd warned me. And I was. I just didn't expect the attack to come at my own graduation party. May 15th dawned bright and clear. Perfect Stanford graduation weather. My parents arrived late to the ceremony, barely making it before the procession began. After the ceremony, Mom rushed me through photos. "We need to get back to the house," she insisted. "The caterers might need help setting up." I found it odd that they'd arranged a party at their house rather than near campus, requiring a 2-hour drive for all my friends. Even stranger was their insistence on inviting extended family members I barely knew. "It's a big milestone," Dad had explained when I questioned the guest list. "Everyone wants to celebrate with you." As I drove to my parents' house, my phone buzzed with texts from my roommate Diane. "Something weird is happening at your party. Your sister keeps talking about a big surprise for you." Then another message. "Your parents seem really tense." Your mom snapped at the caterer over napkin placement, not normal party stress. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my stomach was in knots. The house was decorated with blue and red streamers, Stanford colors, and a banner that read, "Congratulations, graduate." Everything looked perfect on the surface, but something felt off. Aunt Judy greeted me with a too-tight hug. "You must be so excited about everything," she gushed, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "All the changes coming your way." Uncle Frank patted my shoulder awkwardly. Mom was flitting between groups, her laugh a little too loud. When she saw me, she raised her champagne glass and a mock toast. Dad was at the bar, pouring stronger drinks than usual. "Big day for the whole family," he said meaningfully. Inside, the house was packed with relatives, family friends, and a few of my Stanford classmates who'd made the drive. "But even she can't say no to the whole family." Amber stood by the fireplace, dressed like she was attending a cocktail party rather than a graduation celebration. "Here's the woman of the hour," she called out, drawing attention my way. "The golden child returns with her fancy degree." I hadn't expected to see Grandpa's lawyer at my graduation party. When our eyes met, he gave me a subtle nod that confirmed my growing suspicions, whatever my parents had planned. They were going to do it today, in front of everyone. We were just saying how proud your grandfather would have been. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations with as much grace as I could muster while trying to figure out what was happening. In the kitchen, I overheard my mother's sister and her husband whispering. "Do you think she knows what they're planning?" Aunt Carol murmured, said there might be some family business to discuss. "I thought you should have someone in your corner." Hard to say. "Harold always said she was the smart one," Uncle Dave replied. "We're all going to make history today, aren't we?" They fell silent when they noticed me in the doorway. "Hazel, congratulations, sweetheart," Aunt Carol said too brightly. As I thanked her, I spotted Marcus Goldstein in the living room. I made my way to Marcus. "I didn't know you were coming," I said quietly. "Your father invited me last minute," he replied, keeping his voice low. Before I could thank him, Amber sidled up to us, champagne glass dangerously full. "Marcus, so glad you could make it," she said, her words slightly slurred. Marcus remained professional. He was a remarkable man who built a successful business and provided well for his family. My mother appeared at his side holding a folder of documents. "It's about family, unity, and fairness, principles that Harold himself valued." Amber positioned herself near them, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Hazel's graduation. It's a proud day for all of us." Grandpa had often complained about my father's distorted sense of fairness when it came to his daughters. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to my father. While we respect his wishes, we as a family feel that a more equitable distribution would better honor his legacy. "I'm just here to support Hazel on her graduation day." I remained perfectly still, my expression neutral despite the rage building inside me. They would restructure Harold's estate to provide equal shares to both of his granddaughters. "She's trying to buy her first home, pay off some debts. You're just starting your career with a prestigious degree. You have your whole life ahead of you to build wealth," Amber snorted. "Right, support. This is your chance to ensure that everyone is treated fairly." She leaned toward me, the smell of alcohol heavy on her breath. "Hope you're feeling generous today, little sister. That's what family is all about, right? Sharing." As she sauntered away, Marcus touched my elbow. "Whatever happens, stay calm," he advised. "Your grandfather anticipated something like this." I didn't have time to ask what he meant because my father was clinking his glass with a knife, calling for everyone's attention. My graduation party was about to become something else entirely. "Friends and family," my father began, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. He paused, taking a long sip of his scotch. "As you know, our family experienced a great loss earlier this year when my father-in-law Harold passed away." My mother nodded beside him, clutching the folder to her chest like a shield. I noticed her hands trembling slightly. "Today isn't just about celebrating Hazel's academic achievement," Dad continued. I had to suppress a laugh at that blatant lie. "As many of you know, Harold left the majority of his estate to Hazel." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some guests looked uncomfortable, while others nodded in agreement. My mother stepped forward, opening her folder. "We've had our lawyer drop some simple documents," she said, her voice higher than usual. She looked at me with what she probably thought was a warm, encouraging smile. "Hazel, sweetheart, we know you've always been concerned about family harmony." "Fairly," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "Is that what this is about?" "Of course," Dad jumped in. "Your sister has struggled financially, as you know." Amber stepped forward then, her eyes suddenly watery. "I know Grandpa and I weren't as close as you two were," she said, her voice catching theatrically. "But I loved him too. But don't I deserve some security from his estate?" I looked around the room, taking in the expectant faces of relatives I barely knew, friends who looked deeply uncomfortable, and my family, so certain they had me cornered. "No," I said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. "What did you say?" My father asked, his friendly facade slipping. I said, "No, I won't be signing anything today or any other day." My mother's smile faltered. "Hazel, you might not understand what you're turning down. These papers would still leave you with a substantial sum. You want me to give up what Grandpa specifically left to me because Amber has mismanaged her money for years?" The answer is no. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. Amber's performance instantly transformed to anger. This is about respecting Grandpa's wishes. He made his decisions for specific reasons. "You selfish," she hissed. "You always thought you were better than everyone else. Grandpa's perfect little protege." "This isn't about who's better," I replied calmly. "You manipulated him," my father shouted, his face reddening. "You took advantage of a sick old man." Several relatives gasped at his outburst. I noticed my Stanford friends edging toward the door, sensing this was no longer a celebration. Hazel spent all that time with him when he was vulnerable, filling his head with ideas. Harold wasn't in his right mind when he made that will, my mother insisted, looking around for support. My Uncle Ted stood up then. "With everyone here to witness, Hazel can show what kind of person she really is, selfish or family-oriented." I spoke with him 2 weeks before he passed, and he knew exactly what he was doing. "Now, wait a minute, Susan. Your father was sharp as a tack right until the end." "Stay out of this, Ted," my father snapped. "You don't know the whole story." The room was dividing now, some relatives backing away while others moved closer, eager for the drama. My cousin Jennifer tried to diffuse the situation. "Maybe this isn't the right time or place." "It's exactly the right time," my father interrupted. Marcus Goldstein cleared his throat. "Your grandfather's favoritism. What have you ever done to deserve any of it? Your sister has real-world problems, real needs." As Harold's lawyer, I should point out that attempting to coerce someone into signing away their inheritance could be considered duress, which would invalidate any document signed under such circumstances. My father glared at him. "No one invited you to speak, Goldstein." Before anyone could react, he strode to the fireplace and held it over the flames. "You don't deserve anything you haven't earned yourself." "Actually, you invited me here," Marcus reminded him mildly. The confrontation was spiraling. My mother was now openly crying while Amber paced angrily behind my parents. "You've been handed everything your whole life," my father continued, turning back to me. "Stanford, internships." In that moment, any remaining illusion about my family shattered completely. "Real-world problems she created herself," I replied. "And you enabled her every step of the way." That's when my father snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing my diploma from where I'd set it on the side table. "Dad, don't," I started, but it was too late. "You don't deserve Grandpa's money," he roared, dropping my diploma into the fire. The room froze in collective shock as my Stanford diploma, the physical representation of 4 years of hard work, curled and blackened in the flames. But as a deeply insecure woman who had never learned to stand on her own. "And that's the last thing you'll ever get from me?" I expected to feel devastation. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. I looked at my father standing triumphantly by the fireplace, my mother wringing her hands beside him, and Amber's satisfied smirk, and I smiled. "Thank you," I said quietly. "What?" my father asked, confusion replacing his anger. Some relatives were shouting at my parents, others were rushing to follow us, and my mother's wails could be heard above it all. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are, in front of all these witnesses. I won't forget it." I turned to leave, but my father grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare walk out." "We're not finished," Marcus asked after we'd driven in silence for several minutes. "I think we are," I replied, pulling free. What mattered was seeing my father's mask slip completely, revealing the resentment and jealousy he'd harbored toward me for years. What mattered was watching my mother stand by, enabling his cruelty as she always had. What mattered was Amber's satisfied smirk as my achievement turned to ash. As I headed for the door, Amber blocked my path. "If you leave now, don't ever expect to be welcomed back," she threatened. I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time, seeing her not as my intimidating older sister. "I won't be back," I promised her. I felt hands on my shoulders and turned to find Marcus beside me. "I'll walk you out," he said firmly. As we left, the party exploded into chaos behind us. In the driveway, Marcus guided me to his car. "I don't think you should drive right now," he said gently. "Let me take you somewhere safe." As we pulled away from the house that had never really been a home, I watched the chaos through the rearview mirror, growing smaller with distance. "Are you all right?" I considered the question carefully. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be." The diploma burning, that was my breaking point. Not because the paper itself mattered. Stanford would issue a replacement. Marcus drove us to a quiet diner about 20 minutes from my parents' house. As we settled into a booth, my phone exploded with notifications, texts from friends who'd witnessed the scene, messages from relatives taking sides, and increasingly angry demands from my parents to return immediately. "You should turn that off for now," Marcus suggested, signaling the waitress for coffee. "Give yourself some space to think." I silenced my phone and took a deep breath. I knew something like this might happen, but I never imagined they'd make such a public spectacle. Marcus nodded. "Your grandfather anticipated this reaction. He was very perceptive about your family dynamics." "What did you mean back there when you said Grandpa had anticipated something like this?" Marcus stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "He was concerned they would try to pressure you into giving up your inheritance or contest the will. Harold and I had many conversations about your parents' attitudes toward money. Can they contest it?" I asked. But Harold was very thorough. For the past 3 years, he had regular psychological evaluations documenting his mental competence. He videotaped his will signing and recorded a personal message explaining his decisions. He knew this moment would come and he made preparations. "They can try," Marcus said with a slight smile. I felt a wave of gratitude for my grandfather's foresight. I lay awake for hours, replaying the day's events and wondering how I'd never seen the full extent of my family's toxicity before. "So that is why you weren't too worried when they started making those accusations about me manipulating him?" I scrolled through them selectively, my roommate Diane asking if I was okay, my cousin Jennifer apologizing for not standing up for me more forcefully, my father threatening to cut me off completely, my mother guilting me about her stress-induced migraine, and Amber alternating between vicious insults and plaintive claims that I was tearing the family apart. Exactly. But Harold didn't just protect the will. He protected you. The trust had very specific conditions that would only be revealed at the official reading of the will. He had also set up a separate account to cover any legal expenses I might incur if the will was contested. Based on the number of calls and messages you've received, we could potentially file for a restraining order if necessary. As Marcus explained, Grandpa had established a trust rather than leaving everything directly to me. I want to be fully prepared for whatever comes next. "Your grandfather loved you very much," Marcus said. "He told me once that you were the daughter he wished he'd had." That night, I stayed at a hotel rather than returning to campus where my parents might find me. The next morning, my phone showed 37 missed calls and dozens of messages. "The bank is investigating, but it appears they may have committed fraud." The most disturbing messages came from unknown numbers. Apparently, my parents had shared my contact information with extended family members who are now weighing in with their opinions on what I should do with my inheritance. I methodically blocked the negative numbers and responded only to supportive friends. I hired a private investigator to look into why your parents were so desperate for this money. My parents' desperate grab for the inheritance wasn't just about their usual favoritism. Amber has significant gambling debts over asterisk asterisk dollar, 200,000 asterisk asterisk owed to some potentially dangerous people. The police identified your father's car on the street, but he was gone by the time they arrived. Then I called Marcus. I need to know everything Grandpa set up, I told him. No more surprises. We met at his office that afternoon. The comfortable space, with its leather-bound books and subtle scent of lemon polish, reminded me of quiet afternoons spent with Grandpa. Marcus laid out several folders on his desk. I authorized Marcus to hire a security company to install cameras and a new alarm system at Grandpa's house, my house now. He hoped you'd never need to read it. We froze certain assets my parents might try to access. I changed all my passwords and created a new email address that only trusted friends would know. I'm sorry. It is a terrible thing to discover that the people who should love you most are capable of such selfishness. First things first, he said. I've prepared a cease and desist letter to send to your parents regarding harassment. Your parents and sister will try to make you feel guilty. They'll call you selfish. Remember that protecting yourself from those who would take advantage of you is not selfish. Not just for the family I lost today, but for the grandfather who had loved me enough to prepare me for this moment, even knowing he wouldn't be here to help me through it. It's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup, as they say. I nodded, still struggling to accept that legal protection from my own family was now something I needed to consider. The money is yours to build the life you deserve. Whatever happens, know that I am proud of you. Not for what you achieve, but for who you are. All my love, Grandpa, asterisk. Second, Marcus continued, I've discovered some concerning financial activity regarding your grandfather. S house. He slid a document across the desk. Your parents took out a second mortgage on the property 3 months ago. Using a power of attorney your grandfather granted your mother for medical decisions only. The revelation shouldn't have shocked me, but it did. They were stealing from him before he was even gone. It appears so, Marcus confirmed. And there's more. He hesitated. Because you were smart with money or because we shared a special bond, though both those things are true. Your sister's financial troubles are more serious than you might realize. The pieces fell into place. They were trying to bail Amber out of serious trouble. Yesterday, while you were at your graduation ceremony, Marcus continued, the security company reported an attempted break-in at your grandfather's house. I felt a chill. What were they looking for? Probably anything they could sell quickly. Artwork, collectibles. Your grandfather had some valuable first edition books. We spent the next few hours implementing a comprehensive protection plan. As I was leaving, Marcus handed me a sealed envelope. Your grandfather asked me to give you this if things ever reach this point, he said. Alone in my hotel room that night, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. My dearest Hazel, if you're reading this, then your parents have shown their true colors, as I feared they might. I want you to know that my decision to leave my estate to you wasn't. I chose you because in you I see the values I tried to live by. Integrity, hard work, and genuine care for others. The house holds many memories for me, but now it's yours to create new ones. Sell it if you wish. Keep it if it brings you joy. I clutched the letter to my chest and finally allowed myself to cry. Tomorrow would bring the official reading of the will, and likely more drama. But tonight, I had Grandpa's words to comfort me. I wasn't alone. Each morning, I woke up with a clearer sense of purpose and a growing determination to honor my grandfather's legacy by standing my ground. This won't just be a legal battle, he had warned me. It'll be an emotional marathon. You need support. Even now, the week after my disastrous graduation party was a masterclass in crisis management. When I didn't respond to their messages, they enlisted flying monkeys, relatives and family friends who called to tell me, How worried my parents were, how heartbroken my mother had become, how I needed to be the bigger person. I appreciate your concern, but I won't be discussing it further. Marcus had connected me with Dr. Elaine Foster, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and inheritance disputes. During our first session, Dr. Foster helped me understand that my family's behavior wasn't just about money. The security company called to report another attempted break-in at Grandpa's house. This is no longer just about the inheritance. They're committing crimes. This time, with clear footage of both my parents trying to force open the back door. Family disputes are the worst, she said, completing her report. We'll increase patrols in the area, but you might want to consider having someone stay at the property. When the alarm sounded, they fled, but not before my father threw a rock through an antique stained glass window that had been in the family for generations. They seem terrified about what will happen if they can't get access to that inheritance soon. My parents had already remortgaged their own house to pay off her previous debts, leaving them financially vulnerable. It was about control. They're realizing they can no longer manipulate you financially, she explained. That's why they're escalating. If your parents use your grandfather's money to pay off these debts without addressing the underlying addiction, she'd just accumulate more debt. It wouldn't be directly accessible to her or my parents, I specified. That's very generous considering everything they've done. He believed in helping people help themselves, not enabling destructive behavior. According to our source, they were prepared to make ugly accusations about both me and my grandfather in court. They would only pay a treatment facility directly. We have years of documentation proving your grandfather's mental competence. We have the video of him explaining his decisions. We have financial records showing your sister's mismanagement of money and your parents' enabling. Most importantly, we have the trust document itself, which your grandfather designed specifically to withstand these kinds of challenges. I overheard Uncle Frank talking to your dad. They're planning to claim that your grandfather had dementia when he wrote his will. They're going to say you knew about his condition and took advantage of him. Every boundary you set will initially make them push harder. The security team had repaired the broken window and installed additional cameras. It was Grandpa's legacy, a physical manifestation of his life's work, his values, and his love. He had framed it and placed it prominently on his desk. Next to it was a much older photo of him standing in front of the half-built house, young and proud of what he was creating. As I walked through the familiar rooms, running my fingers along the bookshelves he'd built himself, sitting in his favorite chair, I felt his presence surrounding me. She was right. My parents' tactics grew increasingly desperate as the days passed. Your mother hasn't eaten in days, my Aunt Sharon claimed dramatically. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of the stress you're causing, another relative insisted. I maintained a calm, broken record response. I'm sorry to hear that. This is between my parents and me. Meanwhile, Marcus and I worked to document everything. We recorded each call, saved every text and email, and kept a detailed log of all contact attempts. Marcus had also hired a digital security expert to monitor my accounts after we discovered someone had attempted to access my email. The IP address traced back to my parents' home. The most disturbing development came 3 days after the party. We should file a police report, Marcus advised when I showed him the footage. The responding officer viewed the security footage with a sympathetic expression. That night, my cousin Jennifer called. Unlike the other relatives, she wasn't trying to manipulate me into reconciling with my parents. I need to warn you about something, she said in a hushed voice. That's ridiculous, I said, though the accusation still stung. Grandpa was sharp until the very end. His doctors will confirm that. I know, but they're desperate. And Susan mentioned something about Amber owing money to dangerous people. Marcus' investigation had confirmed Jennifer's information. Amber's gambling problem had led her to borrow from loan sharks, and the interest was compounding weekly. Your sister needs professional help, not a bailout, Dr. Foster told me during our next session. I knew she was right, but it was hard to completely harden my heart against Amber's situation. Despite everything, she was still my sister. After careful consideration, I asked Marcus about setting up a separate fund for addiction treatment if Amber ever decided to seek help. Marcus looked at me with newfound respect. It's what Grandpa would have wanted, I said simply. The day before the official will reading, we received an anonymous tip that my parents had hired a lawyer known for aggressive tactics in contesting wills. Let them try, Marcus said confidently. That evening, I visited Grandpa's house, my house, for the first time since his passing. In his study, I found a photo I'd never seen before. Grandpa and me at my high school graduation, both of us beaming. I realized then that this house wasn't just a piece of real estate or an asset in an inheritance dispute. My parents saw it as a piggy bank to break open. I saw it as a responsibility to honor. That night, I slept in my grandfather's house for the first time since becoming its owner. As I drifted off in the guest room that had always been mine during visits, I felt a sense of peace despite the storm I knew was coming. Tomorrow would bring the official will reading and likely a showdown with my parents and sister, but tonight I was home. And I was ready. Mahogany furniture, tasteful artwork, and the subtle scent of leather-bound books created an atmosphere of solemnity appropriate for the occasion. I had arrived 20 minutes early at Marcus's suggestion. The law offices of Goldstein and Associates projected an air of dignified professionalism. They'll be entering your space, not the other way around. As I entered the conference room, Marcus gave me a reassuring nod from his position at the head of the table. Most avoided eye contact with me, creating an invisible divide in the room between my side and their side. It gives you the psychological advantage, he'd explained. My father refused to look at me, while my mother made a show of dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Amber glared openly, her expression a mixture of hostility and triumph, and personal effects contained therein, as well as the sum of $2.4 million, representing the bulk of my liquid assets and investments. I, Harold James Matthews, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previously made wills and codicils. At precisely 10 MA parents and Amber arrived, accompanied by a thin, nervous-looking man who introduced himself as Gerald Peters, their attorney, and trustee, with Marcus Goldstein serving as the trust administrator until Hazel reaches the age of 30. Several other relatives trickled in. My mother's brother, Uncle Ted, who had always been kind to me, Aunt Sharon, who had been calling me relentlessly all week, and 2 of my grandfather's cousins whom I'd met only a handful of times. My father-in-law was not in his right mind when he made these arrangements. We intend to contest this will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. At 10:15, Marcus closed the door and addressed the room. Thank you all for coming. And that Hazel took advantage of his vulnerable state to manipulate him into changing his will in her favor. I want to make it absolutely clear that I am of sound mind, making these decisions with full awareness of their implications. Before proceeding with potential litigation that I assure you will be both costly and unsuccessful, I do like to share something with everyone present. I've chosen Hazel as my primary beneficiary because she has demonstrated the values I hold dear: hard work, integrity, and responsibility. She didn't manipulate me. She was the only one who never asked me for money or tried to influence my decisions about my estate. He spoke about Amber's history of financial irresponsibility and addiction issues, my parents' enabling behavior, and their multiple attempts to pressure him into giving them money over the years. We're here today for the official reading of Harold Matthews' last will and testament. Before we begin, I must ask that everyone remain civil. To my granddaughter Amber, I leave the sum of $50,000, to be held in trust and released only for educational purposes or addiction treatment, should she choose to address her gambling problem. I'm proud of the woman you've become. Additionally, I have established a separate legal defense fund of $250,000 to ensure that my wishes are carried out exactly as I have specified, regardless of any challenges. Any disruptions will result in the immediate removal of the disruptive party. My father snorted derisively but said nothing. He looked tired but alert, his eyes clear and focused. Marcus removed a document from a folder and began to read. The formal legal language continued, detailing small bequests, $5,000 to his church, his collection of fishing gear to Uncle Ted, a set of pearl earrings to my mother that had belonged to my grandmother. Then came the main provisions. To my granddaughter Hazel Marie Matthews, I leave my primary residence at 1423 Oak Lane, including all furnishings. My mother made a choking sound. Amber whispered something to their lawyer, who frowned and made a note. Furthermore, Marcus continued, I have established the Harold Matthews Trust. With Hazel Matthews as the sole beneficiary, my father could contain himself no longer. This is outrageous, he exclaimed. Their lawyer cleared his throat. My clients have substantial evidence that Mr. Matthews was suffering from cognitive decline in his final years. Marcus appeared utterly unfazed. I anticipated these objections, which is why Harold insisted on documenting his mental competence throughout the last 5 years of his life. He turned to his assistant, who wheeled in a television on a stand. Harold recorded this video 18 months ago after his Parkinson's diagnosis, but well before his condition had any cognitive effects, as his neurologist will testify if necessary. Marcus pressed play, and suddenly there was my grandfather on the screen. If you're watching this, Grandpa began, then I've passed on, and my will is being contested, most likely by Susan and Frank. The room fell silent as Grandpa explained in detail why he had structured his will as he had. I love all my family, he continued, but love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. My mother was openly crying now. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Grandpa's recording continued. To my daughter Susan and her husband Frank, I leave the sum of $50,000 with the hope that they will use it wisely. Amber gasped, her eyes widening with shock and shame as her secret was exposed to the extended family. Then came the bombshell. Finally, I include this stipulation. Should any beneficiary contest this will or attempt to coerce another beneficiary into redistributing their inheritance, their own bequest shall be revoked in its entirety and donated to the Parkinson's Research Foundation. The video ended with Grandpa looking directly into the camera. Hazel, if you're watching this, stand your ground. What's yours is yours, fair and square. Silence descended on the conference room. My parents' lawyer looked profoundly uncomfortable, shuffling his papers and avoiding eye contact with his clients. Uncle Ted was nodding slightly, a small smile playing on his lips. As you can see, Marcus said into the silence, Harold was very clear about his wishes and the consequences of contesting them. Should you choose to proceed with litigation, not only will you almost certainly fail, but you will forfeit your own inheritances in the process. My father stood up abruptly. Your choice is simple. Accept the $50,000 each that Harold left you, or pursue a costly legal battle that you will lose and receive nothing. After all the years I took care of him, after everything we've done, this is manipulation from beyond the grave. He can't control us like this. Marcus remained calm. It's a standard no contest clause, perfectly legal and enforceable in this state. $50,000, my mother cried. I finally spoke, my voice steady despite the emotions turning inside me. For the first time, I saw a genuine emotion break through her facade of entitlement. Grandpa saw through you both. He knew you only showed interest in him because of his money. The care you provided was self-serving and transparent. Turning to Amber, I added, he knew about your gambling, even though you all tried to hide it. He wanted to help you get better, not fund your addiction. Amber's face crumpled. How did he know? She whispered. You always thought you were so much better than me. Uncle Ted gave me a warm hug. I hope you choke on all that money, because he paid attention, I replied. He cared enough to see the truth, not just what he wanted to see. I didn't know about the gambling, she murmured, or that they were trying to pressure Harold for money. I'm sorry for the calls. My father grabbed my mother's arm. We're leaving. This isn't over. Based on the evidence presented, I must counsel you that pursuing litigation would be inadvisable and potentially costly. They may still try something, even knowing they'll lose their own inheritance if they contest the will formally. Their lawyer cleared his throat again. Actually, Mr. Walker, I would advise against making threats at this juncture. But Grandpa prepared us for that too, didn't he? Marcus handed each of them an envelope. And speaking of preparation, there's one more thing Harold wanted me to tell you. Something not included in the will or the video. You have 30 days to decide whether to accept the terms or forfeit the inheritance entirely. These contain the official documentation of your bequests, as well as the forms required to claim them. As they stormed out, Amber lingered behind. For a moment, I thought she might say something conciliatory, but instead, she leaned close and hissed. After they left, the remaining relatives approached me one by one. Your grandfather would be proud, he said. You handled that with grace. Aunt Sharon looked embarrassed. When everyone else had gone, Marcus sat down beside me. Inside, you'll find something I've been working on for years. He hadn't just left me his money and his house. He left me his wisdom, his foresight, and most importantly, the courage to stand up for myself. Something I could include in the official will, because it would have caused even more problems with your parents. I'd spent the summer renovating, keeping the character and history that made the place special while updating it to reflect my own taste and needs. You did well, he said. How are you feeling? I considered the question carefully. Vindicated, I decided, and sad. And maybe a little relieved that it's finally over. Unlike the other relatives who had either taken sides or tried to remain neutral, which usually meant pressuring me to reconcile with my parents for the sake of the family, Aunt Judy had simply shown up, offering practical help and emotional support without judgment. Sometimes I worry I'm changing too much, that I'm erasing him somehow. And detailed records of quiet investments he demade over decades, separate from the assets included in his will. Investments now worth over $5 million. It now caught the afternoon light, casting rainbow patterns across the hardwood floors Grandpa had installed himself decades ago, and a journal documenting every attempt my parents had made to access his money over the years, complete with dates, amounts, and his own reflections on their behavior. It might not be completely over, Marcus cautioned. I know, I said. Marcus smiled. He certainly did. You're home. The changes you're making honor that wish. Harold never told me, but he seemed to think it was important. He handed me another envelope. This one sealed with wax in an old-fashioned manner. He asked me to give you this privately after the will reading. Inside was a single key and a handwritten note. Greater than Hazel, asterisk, greater than, in the basement of the house, behind the water heater, there's a hidden safe. This key opens it. It's yours now. Use it wisely. Love always, greater than Grandpa asterisk Marcus, watched my expression change as I read the note. I don't know what's in the safe, he said. That evening, after everyone had gone, I would discover what my grandfather had left me, stock certificates, but for now, sitting in Marcus's office with the key clutched in my hand, I felt a profound connection to my grandfather. What happens now? I asked Marcus. Now, he said with a smile, You begin building your own legacy. 6 months after that fateful graduation day, I stood on the back porch of my grandfather's house, my house, watching the autumn leaves drift across the expansive lawn. The antique stained glass window my father had broken had been painstakingly restored by an artisan who specialized in historical preservation. "He would love what you've done with the place," said Aunt Judy, joining me on the porch with 2 steaming mugs of apple cider. She was the only member of my mother's family who had maintained consistent contact after the will reading. "I hope so," I replied, accepting the cider gratefully. "Nonsense," Aunt Judy said firmly. "Harold never wanted this place to become a museum. He wanted it to be a home." The past 6 months had been a journey of both practical changes and emotional growth. After discovering the hidden investment portfolio in Grandpa's safe, I'd hired a financial advisor recommended by Marcus to help me manage my new wealth responsibly. With her guidance, I'd established my own investment strategy, created a charitable foundation focusing on financial literacy for young adults, and set aside funding for my own future business ventures. You're grieving the family you deserved but never had, the parents who should have supported you, the sister who should have been your ally. I'd also continued therapy with Dr. Foster, working through the complex emotions surrounding my family's betrayal and subsequent estrangement. Other days, a small reminder, a family photo I hadn't yet put away. A holiday advertisement featuring happy relatives gathered around a table would trigger an overwhelming sense of loss. They had ultimately accepted their $50,000 inheritances. When their lawyer convinced them that contesting the will would be futile, the financial troubles continued to plague them. The second mortgage they'd taken out on their house to pay Amber's debts had led to foreclosure proceedings, the kind Grandpa wanted me to get, and ending up in the hospital after loan sharks caught up with her. Our relationship remained fragile and distant. Too much had happened for an immediate reconciliation. But there was a tentative bridge being built, one honest conversation at a time. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was using my own painful experience to help other families avoid similar pitfalls. In a moment of desperation, she had called me. Aunt Judy asked, bringing me back to the present. "He always said you had a head for a business like his." My parents had made one final desperate attempt to challenge a specific provision of the trust, claiming that Grandpa had promised them the lake cottage property that was included in my inheritance. The case had been weak from the start, but its dismissal felt like the closing of a chapter. My father had been forced to postpone his planned retirement. For years, I'd been conditioned to give in to my family's demands, to be the peacekeeper, to put my sister's needs before my own. Now that I was financially stable and emotionally healthier, I could make deliberate choices about how to share my resources, funding Amber's treatment, establishing scholarships, contributing to causes Grandpa had cared about without being manipulated or depleted. The crucible of that terrible graduation day had burned away my need for parental approval and forged something new, confidence in my own judgment, trust in my own worth. His proud smile reminded me daily of what genuine support looked like. Forgiveness might be possible someday, but only with genuine acknowledgement and changed behavior on their part. Until then, I would continue building the life I deserved, honoring my grandfather's legacy, not just by protecting what he had left me, but by embodying the values he had lived by. Next to it was a small wooden box he had carved himself, containing the key to the basement safe, a symbol of the trust he had placed in me. Breaking that pattern had been necessary for my own well-being. Grief isn't just for death, she'd explained during one particularly difficult session, and reflected on everything that had happened since that terrible graduation day. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. Inside, I was finally home, not just in this house, but in myself. And manipulative. Please, we're your parents. You can't just abandon us in our time of need. Each time I maintained the boundaries Dr. Foster had helped me establish, responding with the same calm message: I am not ready to discuss reconciliation until you acknowledge what you did and commit to therapy. They never did. Would you have stood your ground against family pressure, or would you have given in for the sake of peace? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between honoring someone's wishes and keeping family harmony? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if the story resonated with you. The chosen family I'd built around me: Marcus with his steady guidance, Dr. Foster with her compassionate wisdom, and Judy with her practical support, and friends who had stood by me throughout the ordeal, provided the genuine connection my biological family had never offered. That grief came in waves. Some days I could focus on building my new life and feel genuine excitement about the future. My parents had made several attempts to reestablish contact after the will reading, each approach more desperate than the last. Their messages oscillated between angry accusations. This is all your fault. Amber's situation had taken a different turn. 3 months after the will reading, she had hit rock bottom, losing her apartment. I need help, she'd admitted, her voice small and broken. I had arranged for her entry into a specialized treatment program for gambling addiction, paid for through the trust Grandpa had established for her. Are you still planning to start your business next year? I nodded. The business plan is almost finalized. I'm meeting with potential partners next week. Using my business degree and the practical knowledge Grandpa had shared with me, I was establishing a consulting firm specializing in helping family-owned businesses navigate succession planning and wealth transfer. Harold would be over the moon, Aunt Judy said with a smile. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Judge dismissed their latest petition. It's officially over. I showed the message to Aunt Judy, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Now you can truly move forward, Aunt Judy said, squeezing my hand. That evening, after Aunt Judy had gone home, I sat in Grandpa's old study, now my home office. I learned that family isn't just about blood relations. I learned that standing your ground isn't selfish when what you re-protecting is right and just. I've learned that true generosity comes from a place of security, not obligation. Most importantly, I've learned that I was stronger than I had ever realized. On my desk sat a framed photo of Grandpa and me on the day I received my college acceptance letter. Would I ever fully reconcile with my parents? I honestly didn't know. Outside my window, the last light of day filtered through autumn leaves. What would you have done in my situation? Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in life.